Well, a very good morning to you. My name's Phil. I'm the head of CPD. Welcome to this NAHT online webinar. Thank you so much for taking the time today from your school, college, or setting to be with us today. This week, we're covering difficult conversations with Beverley Haywood. A little bit about Beverley. Beverley is the head of representation and bargaining here at NAHT. She's an expert in advising and leading training on handling difficult conversations. Having originally qualified as a solicitor, Beverley has since worked in HR in various sectors over the last 20 years. This includes the educational sector, the emergency service and private industry. She's also a governor and a board member in a multi-academy trust. So a bit more about today's training. A feature in leadership is that from time to time, you are likely to have difficult conversations where people are apt to challenge you. Today's webinar will cover practical tips and strategies that you can use to effectively deal with these situations and emerge with your leadership, your professionalism, and your sanity intact. Beverley will be looking at how to manage and deal with the most difficult of situations, which may be appraisals and also people, whether they are staff, governors or parents. Beverley will be looking at early identification of issues, practical ways to respond, and working with governors and employers to minimise the impact of complaints challenges. This webinar is mainly about difficult conversations. It will touch upon appraisals and the appraisal process. However, to gain greater knowledge on the appraisal process, please book into our full course on Thursday the 14th of October. If any delegates today have any specific queries about appraisals, please drop those into the chat and Beverley will do her best to answer those at the end. A couple of housekeeping points from me finally. We'll share Beverley's slides and presentations with you all within the next 24 hours. Please note that others can see your screen name and any questions that you put into the chat room. Post a question in the chat box. It's a simple click on the tab at the bottom of your screen. There'll be plenty of time at the end for wider discussions and questions, and we'll be doing a poll at the end of the session around any Q&As. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome you to Beverley's presentation. Over to you, Beverley.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Okay, just get this up for you. Can everybody see my screen? Is that all viewable for you? Hello, thank you again, Phil, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me on this session regarding difficult conversations, including appraisals. So what I'd firstly like to do is to outline the purpose of this session today. So what we're aiming to do really is to look at, in terms of dealing with difficult conversations, trying to identify challenging behaviours that you may face in your working lives, and also to explore why people might be challenging towards you. We'll also look at some of the situations where you think you might need to have a challenging conversation and where you anticipate a conversation may be difficult for you, and also, of course, how to prepare for those. I think it's really important as well, as you all well know, that we actually focus on dealing with difficult behaviours as opposed to difficult individuals. And we will look at that in terms of sort of separating the two. On a more positive note, what I also want to share with you is how you might look to build more positive working relationships with a view, of course, to trying to avoid those challenges. Critically, as we all know, it's really important that in our relationships with individuals, be they professional or personal, we are trying to manage expectations, again, to try and minimise or indeed avoid any challenge towards us. We'll also look at some steps in terms of managing future behaviours. And what I thought might be helpful to you this morning is to just touch upon how you might, within the context of difficult conversations and challenging issues, explore how you might deal with parental complaints. Because over the 10+ years now that I've worked with the NAHT, I'm acutely aware of how incredibly difficult parental and carer complaints can be, how very protracted and time-consuming they can be. So we'll have a look at that. And I think also for me, probably the most important element of today is just a reminder about your own well-being and looking after you in terms of some of the challenges that you have to face day in, day out. So when we're looking at people who are demonstrating challenging behaviours, again, I'm sure a number of these points will resonate with you. It could be that you're dealing with an individual who has a very, very firm view about what they want, but you may not agree with that view. And it could well be that they have a very firm view that they have a right to what they believe they want. Very often, as again, I'm sure many of you experienced, individuals can make matters terribly personal towards you and about you. Quite often they may not take no for an answer, and although on the face of it they may come to you with a particular issue, they may well want to broaden that challenge because of how they might be feeling. They may in some way feel victimized, and that you've singled them out in some way. And I think really that penultimate bullet point there, in terms of the abdication of responsibility for feelings, I have no doubt on this webinar this morning that a number of you have faced situations where individuals, be they staff, be they parents, be they governors, have poured out their responsibility, their feelings towards you, as though you should be taking responsibility for those feelings. And you yourself may feel a personal responsibility to respond to how somebody is explaining that they're feeling towards you. But actually, it's not always wise to, for example, use terminologies such as "I understand how you feel," and we'll come on to that a little bit later this morning. And again, I don't doubt that a number of you face situations where individuals are saying to you, "I hear what you're saying, Joy, I hear what you're saying, Chloe," but whether they're actually listening could well be another matter. So we'll look at listening skills again a little bit later. So just giving some thought to why people can be difficult to deal with, why they can demonstrate really challenging behaviours towards us. And it could be, of course, and we've heard it before, haven't we? Oh, that's just so-and-so being so-and-so. That's just how they are as a character. Challenging behaviours, of course, can be a manifestation of the fact that people are having a very, very difficult time. They might be frightened in some way. They might be retaliating against you. It could also be, of course, because completely unwittingly, because of how we're dealing with them, we're actually contributing to that behaviour, or we're just condoning or tolerating it. Again, this could be linked to so-and-so being so-and-so. And again, we've all been in those situations where people just want to challenge authority. You know, we've all met people where if you say something's black, they'll say it's white regardless of the reality. And over the course of my career with the NAHT, there are innumerable times where people have said to me, "Well, Beverley, it's just the principle of this. It's the principle of it. You know, I'm not looking for any financial remuneration." And I absolutely acknowledge that the principles of something can be incredibly potent to us all. And when I think about that final bullet point there, I largely think of children in many ways, but actually the behaviour that people can demonstrate can simply be learnt behaviour. So they don't actually know how to behave any differently. And again, we'll look at that in terms of how we might deal with that in terms of difficulties for you. So giving some thought to when you think you might have to have a difficult or a challenging conversation, and it may not be just an appraisal conversation, it may not be just about somebody's performance. So think about when those challenges might be there for you. When might you anticipate that? It could be that you're having to tackle a governor about their own behaviour. It could be that you've got a representative from your local authority, again, where you think that's going to be a particularly difficult conversation for you. And what I also invite you to do is to think about why that might be challenging and who might it be challenging for. It might be challenging for you, it might be challenging for another individual, or indeed both. And I think it can be really helpful just to give some thought to, well, actually, I'm anticipating this is going to be really difficult for me. It could be a parent that's coming to see you at 4 o'clock that afternoon or tomorrow morning. Give some thought to that, because that might help you prepare for it. Also, the circumstances of what might be a challenging situation for you, and indeed where those may take place. Because more often than not, if you could control the environment about where you might have to have a difficult conversation, that can be really helpful in terms of enabling you to deal with that more effectively. So if we look at some of the reasons as to why something might be challenging, it could be that somebody is making some unreasonable demands of you, I need you to do X, I expect you to do Y. You could, of course, face allegations that somebody's feeling bullied and harassed by you. Very, very potent feelings, I recognise, and these can be incredibly difficult to respond to. Again, it could be that some individuals have threatened that they'll go to their trade union unless you do X, Y, or Z, or unless you don't do X, Y, or Z. And again, we'll come on to that in terms of actually, that may not actually be a bad thing if somebody is supported by a trade union colleague, and indeed it shouldn't be. It could also be, of course, that you're facing allegations that you're treating somebody differently to somebody else, and that as a result of that, you're adversely affecting upon that individual's health, well-being. You could be causing them stress. I'm sure all these challenges resonate with you. But also, of course, that challenge may be because you're not feeling particularly confident yourself about dealing with something. It may be that the knowledge level you have isn't what you might want it to be, or that you've just not experienced that situation before. And these can all be really daunting issues to deal with. We've all been in these situations. We've all dealt, I'm sure, with these situations whereby people have been feeling emotionally at a completely heightened state. They could be angry, they could be upset, they could, of course, feel very, very down and frustrated. And this sort of graphic here could be you, it could be a staff member, it could well be a parent, or indeed a governor. And when we have these feelings of challenge towards us and difficulties, situations that we're in, and again, it could be an appraisal situation where somebody's being very, very robust and challenging towards you. Let's think about how that might make you feel physically and emotionally. We've all heard of the fight and flight syndrome, and depending upon the characters that we are, the resilience levels that we have, the situation that we might be in, these are very, very typical responses to challenging and difficult situations. So it could be that some of you, your inclination is to fight back and retaliate. For some of you, you might feel paralysed by fear and a lack of knowledge as to what to do. And some of you may just want to get out of the situation. And again, that could well link to condoning or tolerating behaviours that you just don't feel equipped to deal with. So physically, when we're facing challenge, again, there are these physical responses that can happen to us that we may not be overtly aware of, but can have a real impact in terms of how we deal with that challenge. And equally, our emotional responses can be very, very powerful. So it could be that you're frightened about the loss of control that you feel is happening to you. And what I often say to members is that they can usually deal with very, very positive news, unsurprisingly, and they can quite often deal very, very, very well with not so good news. But I'd hazard a guess that most of you on this webinar this morning feel that you're most impotent and to a degree most frightened when you don't know what's happening to you, when you don't know what meeting you might be facing, when you don't know what somebody's going to be saying to you. And that can be really, really powerful. In terms of your emotional responses, again, you do the jobs that you do because you've worked incredibly hard to get where you've got. Your experience is such that, again, you've put a huge amount into the role that you do, the support that you give, the effort that you put into your staff, your communities, your children. And if somebody tries to attack that professionalism and that commitment, that can be really, really powerful in terms of how that makes you feel. And you may feel really quite annoyed about that. You may feel worried, of course, that you're actually going to lose your job, depending upon the situation. Again, these are all normal emotional responses. So you may become slightly aggressive, want to argue back, feel a little bit piqued and angry about the challenge that somebody's putting to you after perhaps a huge amount of effort that you've invested in something. And it could be that you do want to retaliate. Not always wise to do that. But again, these are very typical fight responses when we're facing a very difficult and challenging situation. Alternatively, we may feel that we have to perhaps overly explain ourselves for what we've done and justify a decision that we've made, when actually you may not necessarily have to do. Maybe, of course, that you're in denial and you're absolutely convinced that you didn't do anything wrong and that you couldn't have done something any differently than what you did do. And unfortunately, I deal with many, many situations where, because of the pressure that our members are under, and my goodness, the last 18 months has revealed that all too acutely, individuals, that it just gets too much. And when those anxiety levels become chronic, then ultimately that can result in people going off poorly because of stress-related reasons. So what are some of the things you might want to do in terms of being in that very challenging, stressful, difficult situation? What I would advise you to do, if you can do, is to withdraw from the situation. So sort of using a sort of almost combative analogy, if you can withdraw from it to find out more about the situation, to find out more about what's happened, when it's happened, who's been involved, I would strongly urge you to do that, because the more that you know, the better equipped you might feel to deal with the situation. So if you can reassess where things are at, who do I need to speak to? Actually, who might I need to involve in this issue? What advice may I need to give? Do I need to contact the NAHT? Do I need to contact our HR advisors or our legal team or the LADO? Then try and do that, because that will better equip you to respond to what you need to do. And again, potentially overcome or indeed avoid any future challenge or difficulty for you. Because if you think something's going to be difficult or challenging, try and establish as much information as you possibly can do to prepare you for that situation. Because I would hazard a guess that, given the jobs that you do, there are probably certain situations, absolutely, where you do have to respond immediately. Of course you would, if a child's injured, if a member of staff's injured, if there's a sudden concern about safeguarding or an allegation's been put to you that has to be addressed there and then. That's unavoidable. But if you can possibly give yourself time to find out more, to deal with something, I would strongly urge you to do that, rather than feeling that you need to respond with immediacy, that I know some of us do for all sorts of reasons, and invariably the best reasons, but that may not always be the wisest thing to do. So in terms of the general principles, again, when we're faced with those challenges, it's likely that that person has chosen what they want to say, when they want to see you, what they might want to raise with you, but you may not. And they may know exactly what they want of you, of somebody else, of the school, of the setting. So you need to find that out. And I don't doubt that that individual who may be posing a challenge or a difficulty to you, they've probably been preparing for that for quite some time. And you will well know situations where individuals have been storing things up, wanting to lash out to you or pull their hearts out to you. But of course, you need to give yourself that time to prepare a response. So, as I said earlier, if you can do, try and withdraw so that you're giving yourself that time and space to reflect upon what you need to do. Who do I need to speak to? Let me think about what I've actually done here. What could I have done differently? Are there things that I've missed that I should have done that I now need to address? Because I'd hazard a guess that 9 times out of 10, probably the decisions that you make and the actions that you take are probably the right ones. But when you're being bombarded with somebody challenging you, questioning you, making demands of you, that can have a huge impact on your confidence. And I'm very, very aware of that. So the more information you have, the more preparation you can make, then that might help to maintain your confidence levels. So when dealing with challenges, as I say, try and withdraw if you can do. And if things haven't gone as well as what they could have done, then ultimately, I think it's really important to accept that and concede that as appropriate, of course, because there'll be another battle for you, I don't doubt, on another day. And please do seek advice and support at the very earliest opportunity if you can do, rather than after the event. Again, I've dealt with many members over the years who've said, well, actually, I probably could have rung the NAHT. I probably should have taken HR advice. Actually, I probably should have given the Lado a heads up earlier than what I did. So if in doubt, do get that support, because it is there for you. So in doing this, it should enable you to plan your response, how you're going to respond, when you're going to respond, where you're going to respond. Again, to enable you to give that planned professional response and to deal with the situation more effectively and with greater confidence. And as we all know, what dealing with difficult situations is all about, really, it's about control. And I know if I don't feel in control of something, if I don't feel prepared for something, that can have a very adverse impact on me. I run these sessions very regularly for our CPD department. But if I don't prepare and I don't feel I've done what I need to do, then that can have a real impact on my confidence and actually on how I deliver on the day. And I'm no different to any of you. So it's about trying to prepare yourself so that you feel in control. So if you can do, control your environment, control the conversation that you're going to have, and control the process. Again, we'll look at some tips as to how you might want to do that. But the critical thing in all of this, of course, is that you're responding to somebody and you're not reacting with those emotional responses that we talked about earlier, those fight-flight responses. So thinking to what you've done already in terms of difficult and challenging conversations for you, I don't doubt that you've tried to be understanding with individuals. I don't doubt for a moment that you've tried to be reasonable and rational and measured in dealing with individuals. I'm certain you've tried to be fair and consistent and robust. So it could be, again, thinking about that appraisal review situation where somebody may be really quite angry towards you about targets that you've set, objectives that you believe haven't quite been met, but somebody is adamant that they have been. And it could be, like we talked about earlier, that there have been those situations where you've just given up. You've tolerated behaviour and condoned behaviour that you know is inappropriate because you've just felt too weary or too exhausted to actually do anything differently. And these are human reactions. We talked earlier about expectations, and I think it's so important that you try and manage those carefully, again, to try and avoid those difficult, challenging conversations. And again, I deal with many members, be they school business managers, head teachers, executive heads, assistants, deputies. And because of the commitment to the children, to the setting, to the community, they can actually unwittingly inflate people's expectations. And again, I don't doubt over the course of your working lives, you said to many people, I've got an open door policy. You can talk to me about that at any time. If you've got any issues, just come straight to me. But actually, that may not always be the wisest thing to do, because again, it's inflating people's expectations, whereby you might not be able to meet those. And I think it's really important that you're clear with people, be they staff, governors, parents, about how, of course, they can raise issues of concern with you, but equally to make it clear to them about what standards of behaviour you expect from them. I don't doubt that you do that with your children in terms of your behaviour policies and how issues of concern, you will deal with those, and they may, if they escalate, So I think it's really important that you're being clear with people what standards of behaviour you expect of them. Because the principles in terms of dealing with the children that you deal with are just the same. It's about dealing with behaviour and expectations of behaviour. So in terms of dealing with difficulties and challenges, I think what's really important is to make sure that you're dealing with behaviour, and don't wait to do that. The issues will be separate and should absolutely be separate from any individual's reactions and behaviours that you might have to deal with. An issue will well know in the jobs that you do day in, day out, you have to tackle behaviour if it does start to become inappropriate or heated. Because once you do that, then it's important to move on to the issues in hand. So let's give some thought to how you might actually do that. How practically might you do that? Envisage yourself where you're in a situation of particular challenge or difficulty for you. It could be that you've got a parent in your office or in reception who's really quite heightened and upset about something. And again, they're posing challenges to you. It could be that a member of staff is very, very aggrieved about something that you're proposing. So think about that. Actually, what is the issue to you? Is it somebody is challenging a legal duty that you have that they don't believe you're exercising? It could be that you have a statutory duty to do something that somebody doesn't like or they disagree with. Is it the fact that somebody doesn't like your policy? They may not like your observation policy. They may not like your flexible working policy or your behaviour policy or your parental complaints policy. Or is it a decision that you as a professional have taken that somebody just doesn't like and they don't agree with and they think you should have taken a different decision? So I think it's really important to actually at the outset focus on what is the issue? What is the challenge towards me or to the school? And when I think about this, I reflect upon individuals who either lodge or who want to lodge grievances. And one of the first questions I ask of our members, if they say, well, Beverley, I want to lodge a grievance about this, which of course is your statutory right to do that as an employee. One of my first questions is, what remedy are you seeking from it? What do you want as a consequence of lodging a grievance, which you're perfectly entitled to do? And invariably, within reason, you will have my support to do that. But let's just think about what you actually want, and then we can work from there. Equally, when our members, as unfortunate they do on occasion, are a respondent to a grievance, the first question I ask of the investigating officer, or indeed our member, is, do you know what they want? What do they want as a consequence of raising that concern? And never lose sight of that. And that first emboldened point there, don't underestimate the power of questioning. What I'm really inviting you to think about here is when individuals are putting questions to us, it can feel a little bit nerve-wracking. We can feel somewhat impotent or disempowered in terms of that. We might feel on the back foot. We might think, oh, crikey, I've got to answer that now. However, turn that around when you're next facing a situation of challenge. So again, it could be a governor who's being particularly demanding of you. And it could be that you say, well, actually, what do you expect me to do about that? What do you think could be done about that? It could be that you share a difficulty and say, this is the situation that we have in terms of year groups, classrooms. I can't avoid doing X. I realise you want me to do Y. So what do you think a reasonable solution could be? Never underestimate the power of asking other people questions, because it can change. And I don't like particularly the use of power, but it can really help in terms of enabling you to feel more in control and also better equipped to deal with challenge and difficulties. And just give that some thought and just try it when you're back at work, next in your settings, and somebody's demanding of you. Just invite them, say, what do you think about that? What do you think could be done? What do you think is the best solution here? Or actually, I can't avoid my responsibilities in terms of keeping children safe in education. You want me to do X. So actually, there are things I can't avoid, as I say, a statutory duty. So ultimately, we can't go any further on this unless there's something that you can think of that I've missed. It can be really powerful. And again, you know, I hope again this will resonate with you. Just because somebody thinks that you are wrong doesn't mean that they're right. And again, I think that can be really important, you know, when your confidence levels are being eroded or somebody's trying to challenge you and derail you. They may feel very strongly that what you've done is not right, but it doesn't mean that what they're suggesting is the correct course of action. You all know, I have no doubt, how to listen actively. We talked earlier, didn't we, about hearing as opposed to listening. And I'm acutely aware of the immeasurable pressure that you're all under at the moment, and indeed have been for a considerable amount of time. But try, if you possibly can do, when you've got 1,001 things on your mind, when you've got a very, very long day ahead of you, in situations where you need to, do actively and demonstrably listen. Because again, in my experience, that can go an awful long way to preventing any challenge and difficulties and suggestion that you're not listening or you're not being heard by somebody. And I won't go through all of these bullet points, they are self-evident. But you know, when you think, oh my goodness me, my attention's waning here, you know, I'm thinking about something else, try really hard to come back to that individual in hand, that issue in hand, so that again, you're getting all the information you can do to better equip you to then deal with it at a later stage if you need to. And again, test your understanding. Don't be afraid to ask those questions like we just touched upon. Can I just check with you that your expectations are X, or actually, following this meeting, you're going to do this and I'm going to do that. Again, it can be really helpful to use questioning to test understanding. So, in terms of if you can prepare for a difficult and challenging situation, which I would hazard a guess, invariably you can do. And if you have to do, like I said earlier, try and withdraw and gather the information. And it could well be that you're facing a situation where you're having to say to somebody, this issue clearly needs some time and attention, that I'm not able to give it now. However, I do think we need to get together tomorrow, later today, because I need to find out more. And so let's put half an hour aside, 40 minutes aside, when we need to really get to the bottom of this. That's professional, you're keeping in control, and ultimately somebody sees that you are taking up that control and giving them the time that they may want of you. So if you can do with a meeting or a discussion, try and set the agenda or find out what the agenda is. I don't doubt again that many of you have been on this webinar today, have been called to a meeting where you have no idea what that meeting is going to be about. You don't know who's going to be there. You don't know how long you're going to be there. So it's really important that you try and find out the agenda, or at least what the outcomes of the meeting are intended to be. So don't be afraid to ask. Somebody says, can I come and see you at 4 o'clock today? And you can do, say, by all means, but can you give me an indication as to what you'd like to discuss with me, or what you might be wanting from the meeting? Perfectly professional and reasonable question to ask. It could be also, of course, that there are things that you might want to add to that discussion. And it could be that there are things that you want from the meeting and that there are outcomes that you're seeking. And be clear about timings. We'll touch on this earlier, but the one commodity in our lives that we all share is 24 hours in one day. So if you can give somebody 10 minutes when they ask of it, then you may want to do that. But if you can't give them an hour, then explain the fact you can't give them an hour. Because to say not now to somebody, or could we do that later, doesn't mean never. So don't be afraid to say, I've only got 10 minutes now, or I've got 15. And if we need more, that's fine, but I can't give you the time that you need absolutely now. We talked earlier about behaviours. Again, constantly monitor those. If people are becoming upset or distressed, then you need to check that and deal with that appropriately, firmly, sympathetically, however the situation dictates. Can be really helpful, again, to recap on outcomes and action points. Like we touched on earlier, test your understanding, ask those questions. Can I just check that I'm going to be doing Y, or you understand that tomorrow I'll be speaking to so-and-so and that I'll get back to you by the end of this week or next week, whatever it may be. I'm very realistic about the fact that with the roles that you do, you can't possibly follow everything up in writing. And that's a judgment for you as professionals, for the people that you deal with, to document what's appropriate for you. And I make those judgment calls every day as well. But if you think something should be followed up in writing, may just be an email with bullet points, I would strongly urge you to do that, because that can be really helpful if there's any challenge to you, any misunderstanding, or heaven forbid, if you may be facing a grievance issue, whereby you can then say, I've got the evidence to demonstrate that I did that. I've got the evidence to demonstrate that I did seek HR advice, and this is the advice that I got. And of course, do what you say you'll do. And if you can't, explain that you can't and why you can't and when you might be able to do it. So obvious, I know, but we're all busy people and sometimes things do get overseen. So do what you say you'll do, because people, I find, can be very, very forgiving if you can't always do what you said you would do when you said you would do it, as long as they have an indication as to when you might be able to. So in terms of those difficult conversations, those challenging conversations, from the outset, try and seek that common understanding about what the issues are, as in, what is it you want to talk to me about? What is it that's concerning you? Absolutely encourage transparency, honesty, that openness about everything that's of concern. Most of us attend meetings to have discussions, to air our views, to share views. And most discussions will then inform a decision. So it's really important that you keep those two separate. And again, I think what's important for you, if you're arranging a meeting, or of course, if you're attending a meeting, is really only appropriate individuals should be involved in those discussions and conversations. Because if it's not appropriate, it begs the question, why am I there? And again, some of you may have been in situations where you may be accompanied by your deputy heads or your assistant heads, and somebody said to you, why is that person here? So make sure people are clear about who's attending the meeting. Make sure that you're clear about who's attending meetings and why that you may have to attend. We talked about confirming things in writing, if you possibly can do, of course. And again, if timescales have to change, which they often do, make sure that's communicated. So use your governors, use your members of your trust boards as appropriate. Use your HR advisors, use your legal advisors, use the NAHT for the support that you might need. We've talked about documenting what you've done. And as I say, that's always going to be a judgment call for you. Of course, there are things that you have to put in writing, but it can be really valuable just for yourself to do some bullet points. Even if you email yourself, that can be really, really powerful, if you do need evidence at some point down the line. We touched earlier on the engagement of trade unions, and that can be really, really helpful. And so don't be afraid if a member of staff saying, well, I'm going to bring my trade union along. I mean, I suppose I would say that, wouldn't I, as a trade union representative? But trade unions, of course, should behave themselves with propriety and professionalism and respect. And I'm very, very aware that sometimes they don't do that. And again, it's about tackling that behaviour, because you're not in the roles that you're in to be treated unprofessionally or inappropriately. So formal processes can be very helpful. They give you a structure to deal with things, be it a parental complaint procedure, be it a disciplinary procedure, be it a capability procedure. So don't be afraid of those. Now, again, sometimes, unfortunately, situations can arise where, and I'm thinking really more so here with external stakeholders, whereby we have to lay down conditions for communication. So it could be that you say to a parent or a carer, look, actually, I'm only going to communicate with you by email or letter, and I will do that once or twice a week, particularly for those individuals who will bombard you with 5, 10 emails a day or emails in the middle of the night. And I'm sure you've all been there. And it's absolutely right and proper for you to limit your communications if you think that's appropriate to do so. It could be that you'll only meet with a particular parent or a member of staff accompanied by somebody else. And sometimes things do get to this stage, I realise that. And it could be, again, reflecting back on your statutory duties, that there are things that for you are just not negotiable, things that you have to do, be it it's a policy or a statutory responsibility. But there are things whereby they may be negotiable. And if there are things whereby you have to say to somebody, I cannot move on this, I have to ensure that I'm complying with X, Y, or Z, then make sure people are clear about that. But if things do have to progress, be it, say, from an appraisal process to a capability process, or if you like, an informal monitoring plan to something more formal, or perhaps a management advice to maybe more formal conduct proceedings, be really clear about that with all parties concerned, and also about what procedure may be involved. And again, there are many meetings that members will approach me to accompany them to, and I will say to them, are you clear as to what procedure is involved? What is the situation? Is it a conduct matter? Is it a capability matter? Is it a grievance issue? Is it parental complaint? And that's really important. Again, from the outset, I will regularly ask investigating officers, what procedure is being followed here? And I need the latest ratified procedure from the governing body or the trust board. So in all of this, absolutely, there are some house rules. You have 24 hours in one day, and it's your choice to give people, within reason, I accept, what time you have. It's not an individual's right to have it. So use that time to try and avoid you feeling stressed and out of control and feeling challenged in some way. And it's like I said earlier, if you need to say to somebody, I'm sorry, I can't actually see you at this very moment in time, but if you're free at 4 o'clock or tomorrow morning, let's give ourselves the time that we need then. So use that, take control of your time. And you don't always have to justify everything that you do to everybody, particularly if they disagree with you. It could simply be that it's my responsibility for the day-to-day running of this school. That's what I'm employed to do. That's what the board employ me to do. The governors employ me to do. The local authority employ me to do. And that's what I'm doing. And I believe I'm exercising my professional judgment and my discretion in the best interests of all of the children, which of course you have to focus on, not just your child, or in terms of all of the staffing community and not just yourself. I said earlier that I'd just touch upon parental complaints, and reflecting back upon my career with the NAHT, I'd probably hazard a guess that maybe 5 to 8 years ago, parents, I don't think, had quite the expectation that they do these days. And I know many members will say to me now, Beverley, I feel like I'm the fourth emergency service. I feel like I'm everything: a social worker, a paramedic, a counsellor, an educational psychologist, a friend, in addition to trying to be a head or a deputy and so on. And of course, again, I'm very, very aware of the financial, absolute chronic financial erosion in terms of the education sector. And you will be aware that's one of the focus of our campaigns in terms of government, in terms of properly and appropriately financing the education sector, because local authorities and trust boards simply don't have the resources that maybe hitherto they did. And I don't doubt that many of you have probably been threatened by parents, carers. I'm going to go to Ofsted, I'm going to write to my MP about this. Yeah, I'm going to write to whoever it may be. Gavin Williamson, the local MPs, Boris Johnson, in terms of the concerns I've got about this setting. And I don't doubt that you've faced all of those challenges. So just a word of support really and encouragement in terms of your complaints procedure. But I think the principles here go equally hand in hand with your appraisal procedures, capability, grievance. Make sure your procedures are clear and they're current, and that they're publicised, and that you know those procedures and your staff know those procedures. And I think particularly with governors in relation to parental complaints, make sure that they're very, very au fait and trained in how to use and apply those procedures. Again, I'm very aware of some of the difficulties that have been caused to some of you because of the fact that with the best will in the world, your governors may have wanted to do the right thing, try and protect you, and yet deal with the parental challenges, but actually they've not followed the procedure. And again, that can cause real difficulties. You will all, again, I'm sure, have dealt with Freedom of Information Act requests, Subject Act requests. You may indeed have made your own requests yourselves. And I can't stress how critical it is to make sure that you're complying with GDPR and that your records and that your data is being stored and processed as it should be in terms of data protection legislation. And if you're in any doubt about that, then really you should be contacting your employer, your data protection officers, to ensure that your records are kept as they should be. And I've put a link there in terms of our complaints procedure because it's a very clear, concise procedure, and it involves a protracted adversarial process, which I know some procedures do actually, unfortunately, facilitate. So when all else fails, do engage support, engage your legal teams if you need to. If you need to invoke formal processes, don't be afraid to do that, but get support and advice in doing that. Be it ourselves, as I say, your employer, your trust board, the LADO. And if you can do, and I would strongly suggest you do this, do get advice from your professionals in writing, be it from an NAHT professional, be it from your HR advisors, be it from your LADO. That can be really, really important if, for example, your understanding of the advice that you've been given actually doesn't accord with, for example, what HR might be saying. And if somebody won't put their advice in writing to you, what I would say, as what I hope is a useful tip for you, is you put that in writing. Put in writing to them your understanding of the advice that they've given you, and invite them to come back to you if that in any way is incorrect. And that can be really, really powerful, again, if somebody's challenging what they've claimed they've said to you, but actually that doesn't quite accord with what you believed they said to you. So in all of this, again, it's important that you absolutely focus on you, because difficult people don't define your headship. They don't define your role, be you a school business leader or an assistant head or a deputy head or an executive head. And the time, we talked earlier about time, that you spend on something does not necessarily equate to how something important it is. It's for you to judge in your own settings the time that you need to spend on something. Use the support that you have, use your senior leadership team, use your professional advisors to help you in your roles, because you can't sail the big ships that you sail alone. And I don't apologise for saying and advising you that it's really important not to become too busy taking care of you. And my goodness, I'm very, very aware of the exhaustion that our members are currently experiencing, not even have experiencing, and how most days it can often feel like just survival. So it's really important that you're trying to take all the relevant measures that you can to look after yourselves. And I know our president, Tim Bowen, one of the key focuses of his presidency is going to be about our member well-being and about the importance of self-care. And if you need help, ask for it sooner rather than later. We have a 24-hour support line that you can access via our website. If you need to access it, please do. And as I say, don't ever feel hijacked by people's time, because that's the one commodity that we do have, and it's precious to us. So use it to make sure that you're looking after you and trying to avoid what could be really challenging and difficult situations for you. That concludes my webinar this morning. So thank you ever so much for your time. I'll very happily take any questions, which is, with the time that we had left. So thank you again.
Thank you, Beverley. That's really a positive way to start a day. Everyone, if you've got any questions, you can put them into chat, or you can come off camera and speak to us directly. Just to advise you that this is being recorded, it will be uploaded onto our YouTube channel, and we will send you the link and a copy of the presentation from today. So has anybody got any questions that they would like to ask? It's difficult to start it off, so hopefully someone will come in. We're getting a lot of thank yous for you, Beverley, in the chat box, saying how great this webinar has been and how much they've enjoyed today. So that's a positive response to your presentation today. But it doesn't look like anyone's going to be brave enough to ask any questions. So what we'll do now is we'll thank you, Beverley, for doing that. And I just wanted to raise a few things. We're going to start the poll now, for if you wouldn't mind answering that poll. We've got a couple of free events coming up and people might want to be aware of. We've got a school business leaders conference next month, and through the support we've got from our people that sponsor these events, we're allowing this to be free. So if you've got a school business manager or a school leader who wants to attend a free conference next month, please go to our website and register free of charge, and you will have a full day's entertainment on that. So we've got one question come in. Is a crib sheet that can be sent out with these types of questions one can think about when approaching difficult meetings?
I mean, I don't have a crib sheet as such, but I mean, I hope the slides will help you. I mean, I think the really important thing is, again, it's about asking what's of concern to people, what the issues are with people, and again, demonstrably saying, look, I want to help. I really want to resolve the issues for you, but it's important that I find out as much as I possibly can do. And when I do that, of course, I'll have to take what decision I need to make, or I'll take what advice I need to make. And I think what's really important as well, and the advice I would give you is, I think it's very important to acknowledge people's feelings. Of course it is. But I think it can be really dangerous if you start to say things like, I completely understand how you feel. Again, I've dealt with situations where people have said to me, Beverley, you can't possibly understand how I feel, for example, because you're not a single parent, in a block of flats who's struggling to find employment. So I think it's about finding out as much as you can do, showing that empathy, saying to people, recognizing the fact they may feel very upset and very angry, but trying to keep calm and saying, I am here to help you, and that's my commitment to do that, but there may have to be things that I really can't avoid doing. And I think it's about being firm but fair in your approach. But I don't have a crib sheet, but by all means, if you want to contact me separately, if there's any particular tricky issue you might need more personal help with, then I'm very happy to help.
Thank you very much, Beverley. We've also got someone suggesting Successful Difficult Conversations in School, which is a book that can help you, support you with that. I don't know if you're familiar with that, Beverley.
No, I'm not, but I welcome the suggestion there, so thank you for that.
Right, okay, well, it looks like we're coming to the end now. We've got a lot of resources on our YouTube channel, different subjects and recordings that you can access free of charge, and we will send you a link to the YouTube channel with the follow-up email to this session today. And as I say, we're approaching the school holidays soon. hopefully people will be able to get some sort of break. But if you got any support or questions that you need, please email us at events@naht.org.uk, and we will pass you on to the people who will be able to answer your question and give you support that you need. Remember, this union is for all school leaders, and if you are not a member and you wish to join, there are a number of special offers available at this time. Just visit our website to see what's available. But I think at the end of the day now, we're at the finish. Beverley, thank you very much for taking part today and providing support to everybody. And we look forward to working with you again in the future. And as I say, if anyone's got any questions or queries, please email us at events@naht.org.uk, and we will come back to you as soon as we can. But if everyone is happy, we are now going to end the session for today. So thank you for taking part, and we hopefully look forward to seeing you again at another free event next time. Thank you very much, Beverley.
Bye-bye.
And we'll say goodbye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.